Everybody, this is fragrance talk today, and today I'm gonna kind of go into this this article here. It's on nationalgeographic.com. It's called "The Ancient Town is the Perfume Capital of India." I would actually argue about that because they say France and New York are the top capitals of perfume in the world. However, if you're talking about where a lot of the raw materials come from, a lot of them come out of India. And I could tell you this because one of my manufacturers, there was something that happened where a manufacturing facility was burned down in India, and they were unable to, or should I say that they had to raise their prices on some of the raw materials because of the burning down of this manufacturing facility in India, and that's where they were getting a lot of the raw materials. But anyways, let's go into this article, guys. This is called "The Ancient Town is the Perfume Capital of India. For centuries, perfumers in Kannauj have worked their alchemy to create quote-unquote liquid gold." Shows a young woman here, says plucks petals from a heap of roses at a sorting center in Kannauj, India. For more than 400 years, Kannauj artisans have been producing rose attar using the world's oldest known perfume making process. Teg Singh arrives at his flower farm on the banks of the Ganges before sunrise, ready to pluck rose petals when they are at their peak bouquet. Circling the dense and haphazardly planted Rosa Damascena shrubs, he works quickly, tossing the light pink petals into a jute sack slung over his shoulder. By the time the first rays of the sunlight skim, where am I at here? By the time the first rays of sunlight skim across the river, the 35-year-old Singh is already on his scooter, ferrying the sweet-smelling load inland to Kannauj, a small city known as the perfume capital of India. For centuries, pronounced Kannauj in northeast India's Ganges belt, has been crafting oil-based botanical perfumes called Attar, using the world's oldest known distillation methods. Sought after by both Mughal royals and everyday folk in ancient India's fragrance-obsessed culture. Kannauj Attar scented everything from wrists to food, fountains to homes. Although attars fell out of fashion in the 20th century, Kannauj perfumers continued to ply their craft the same old-fashioned way, recently awakening a new generation at home and abroad to its sensual, compelling fragrance. The aroma of attar. Attar is old-world perfumery, rooted in the Latin per and fum, through smoke. Perfume got its start with humans crushing and infusing botanicals directly into oil or water. Modern perfumery uses alcohol as a carrier or solvent, for the simple reasons that it is inexpensive, neutral, and easily diffused. But attars are traditionally made with sandalwood oil, which makes them unctuous and highly absorptive. A tiny droplet on the wrist or behind the ear, and the scent seeps into the skin and lingers pleasantly, sometimes for days. And as you can see here, right here, there's a picture of this old man here in the fields. In the countryside around Kannauj, damask roses are harvested early every day by expert hands and delivered to master attar makers. A sack of roses is delivered to the Pranjal Singh Distillery, one of about 350 distillers still operating in Kannauj. Equally alluring to men and women, attars have a androgynous quality. They strike intense floral, woodsy, musky, smoky, green, or grassy notes. trotted out by season. Attars can be both warm, cloves, cardamom, saffron, oud, and cooling jasmine, pandan, vetiver, marigold. Related frankincense trees of biblical lore are being tapped out for essential oils. Canage produces these as well as the dramatic Attar miti, which evokes the scent of earth after a rainfall and is made with shards of unfired Ganges clay. Shamama, another homegrown Canage invention, is a distilled blend of 40 or more flowers, herbs, and woody resins that takes days to make and months to age. The scent manages to harmonize sweet, spice, smoke, and damp, and whisks one off to an otherworldly realm. Renowned perfume houses in Europe use Canage Attar, be it rose, vetiver, or jasmine, as a layer, a compelling chord in the composition of modern perfumery. The art of perfume making. Canage has been concocting Attar, also known as Itter, for over 400 years, more than 2 centuries before Grasse in France's Provence region emerged as a perfume juggernaut, known locally in Hindi as Deg Babka. The artisanal method uses copper stills fueled by wood and cow dung. Canage is a 4-hour drive from Agra and just shy of 2 hours from historic Lucknow, a former princeling state governed by the Nawabs of Oud. Like many smaller Indian cities, Canage is wedged somewhere between past and present. Time here doesn't move on, it simply piles up. Crumbling sandstones, ramparts, onion-domed minarets, and scalloped archways recall the town's earthly grandeur as a seat of Harshavardhana Empire in the 6th century. On the main drag, puttering scooters and the occasional glistening Mercedes careen past fruit sellers pushing wooden carts piled high with guavas and overripe bananas. Duck into the narrow lanes of Bara Bazaar, the main market, and Canage reverts fully to the medieval times. In this labyrinth, long-time shops are crammed with finely cut glass bottles holding attar and rue, or essential oil, each smelling better than the last. Men sit cross-legged on cushioned floor mats, sniffing vials and dabbing behind their ears with extraordinarily long perfumed cotton swabs. Presiding over this age-old commerce is the attar saz, or perfumer, conjuring and enticing with the aura of imperial alchemist. The world's best perfumers have walked through these narrow lanes, making their way through mud and cow dung to get their hands on Canage Attar. There is really nothing like it, remarks Pranjala Kapoor, the 5th-generation partner of M.L. Ramnarayan Perfumers, one of the oldest and roughly 350 distillers still operating here. Teg Singh arrives and unloads his bundles of blossoms in Kapoor's godown, an open-air stone courtyard that serves as the distillery. Ram Singh, Kapoor's master attar craftsman, scoops the petals into a bulbous copper still and tops it with fresh water. Before fastening the lid, Ram Singh packs the rims with a clay and cotton mash, which hardens and creates a formidable seal. When the floury broth begins to simmer, steam flows from the still via a bamboo reed into a copper pot holding sandalwood oil, which readily imbibes the rose-saturated vapor. Surrounded by the copper stills and pots of the trade, freshly picked roses are prepared to be made into essential oil at the M.L. Ramnarayan Perfumers Factory, one of the oldest distilleries in Canage. It takes about 5 to 6 hours for Teg Singh's roses to become rose attar. Throughout this process, Ram Singh stays on his toes, hopping between the still and pot, testing the water temperature with his hands and listening to the hiss of steam into it whether to feed more wood into the fire. I've been doing this since I was a boy, says the 50-year-old Ram Singh, who apprenticed with an attar guru for a decade. related. How humans are hijacking scent, the universal animal language. Interesting. The process is repeated the next day with a new batch of rose petals to achieve the desired potency. Once completed, the rose attar is aged for several months in a camel skin bottle, which wicks moisture. In spite of the old-fangled rig, rose attar is akin to liquid gold. 1 kilo, 2.2 pounds, can fetch up to 2,500, I think that's pounds. That's a lot of money. Pure rose is very expensive, guys. There are no gauges and meters, no electricity, Kapoor points out, adding proudly that his humble wares rival those made by top modern perfume houses in Grasse. I dig it. This is why we need to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Kind of like this, possibly. The difference is like cooking dal lentils in a rustic open-air village kitchen versus an LPG stove or a microwave. The taste will never be the same. Distilled history. The earliest known botanical perfumes date back to ancient Egypt when plants were crushed and infused directly into a base oil. Although the first hydrodistillation of plants is attributed to the Persian physician Ibn Sina, also known as Avicenna, in the 10th century, archaeological excavations in the Indus Valley uncovered rudimentary stills, suggesting that basic perfume making developed earlier. In the 15th century, Gayatri Shahi, the Islamic ruler of Central India's Sultanate of Malwa, penned the Nimmatnama of the Book of Delights, which delves into the world of sybaritic pleasures. Countless passages relay the virtues of smelling good. The Mughals marched into India in the 16th century, bringing with them a lusty, olfactory appetite. The first Mughal ruler, Babur, celebrated the inextricable link between fragrance and spiritual and sensual contentment, and this ethos percolated in the halls of Mughal courts for the next 2 centuries. Babur's son Akbar had a department dedicated solely to developing scents for corporeal and culinary purposes. The Ain-e-Akbar, or Constitution of Akbar, details the emperor's predilections for dabbing his body with fragrant attars, burning incense, and rubbing doors and furniture with copious amounts of perfume. It is believed queens and courtesans wore their personal attar stash in miniature glass vials around their necks. The Mughal Emperor Jahangir and his queen, Noor Jahan, parents of Shah Jahan, who went on to build the Taj Mahal, are considered Kanauja's first royal patrons, according to local folklore. Noor Jahan ignited a run on rose after becoming beguiled by the scent of Kanauj roses in her bath. Fragrance resurgence. But why Kanauj? If you triangulate Agra, Lucknow, and Kanpur, 3 Mughal strongholds with a fondness for scent, Kanauj lies in the middle. Built atop rich alluvial Ganges soil, the town is particularly suited to cultivating jasmine, vetiver, and damask rose, which owes its name to Damascus but is native to Central Asia. Master perfumers were already in place in Kanauj, Kapoor explains. The Mughals simply fired up demand, and Kanauj jumped on the bandwagon. These days, Kanauj is facing a reckoning. When power shifted to British India, demand for attar subsided. When India placed severe restrictions on the sale of sandalwood in the late 1990s, the price of attar skyrocketed. At the same time, status-conscious Indians eager to present themselves as modern and upwardly mobile shifted their allegiance to imported Western perfumes and deodorants. Nature's substitutes such as liquid paraffin are used in lieu of sandalwood. And while this iteration of attar is a close approximation, it doesn't measure up to the original. So there's a picture of an older Indian guy here. Once the final product is produced, the rose attar is aged for several months in a camel skin bottle which wicks moisture. Today, most Kanauj attar ends up in the Middle East and among local Muslim communities. In Old Delhi's Chandni Chowk, a 17th century market built by Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, Gulab Singh Johari Mahal is a longtime market institution that now carries both Kanauj Attar and modern fragrances. Nonetheless, Gulab Singh is almost always full of Muslim men in search of Attar to dab behind the ears before Friday prayers, and to celebrate festivals such as Eid. Kanauj also produces an extraordinary amount of rose water for pan, a popular national snack of tobacco and spices wrapped in betel leaf. But these markets aren't enough to sustain the town's distilleries, and many have had to close or shift to making facsimiles of Western perfumes. In spite of these challenges, Kapoor is optimistic. He spends much of his time courting top international perfume houses, familiarizing them with Attar and the terroir of Kanauj botanicals. Western tastes are shifting east, Kapoor says. Typically, the West prefers light, citrusy notes, but these days you see the big daddies like Dior, Hermes, and of course the Middle Eastern perfume houses going for gilded scents like rose, oud, and shamama. A niche market for high-quality Attar is simmering domestically as well. Anita Lau, the founder of Good Earth and Paro, two contemporary lifestyle brands rooted in traditional Indian design and sensibility, does brisk business with classic rose and vetiver essential oils, though she is eager to reintroduce Attar to younger generations. The tragedy of Attar is twofold, Lau says. Sandalwood is rare, and without it, it's nearly impossible to capture the charm of Attar. Second, Attar is perceived as ridiculously old-fashioned. Pit that against the wiles of Western marketing and the lure of French perfume, well, you can see what we were up against. Perhaps Attar's most prominent global ambassador is native Lucknowi John V. Lakota Nandan, who trained as a master perfumer in Geneva and Paris for 7 years before opening the perfume library. In Goa and Paris, for the ruling families of old Lucknow, she says talking about perfume was a pastime. Everything was fragranced. Clothes, doorknobs, the air, and it was always understood that this Attar must come from Kanauj. I never thought about perfuming doorknobs. I'll have to try that. Nandan's olfactory alchemy is equal parts poetry, eccentricity, and science. Each year she bridges mythology and modernity with one, perhaps two, new scents, and Attar is an important part of her repertoire. In 2020, the Perfume Library launched Earthshine, a blend of the Seji Nagarmotha or nutgrass, Mimosa androgynous, and the androgynous Malshri. Malshri is deeply entwined with Kanauj. Nandan says, adding that as an ornamental favored in Mughal-era gardens, Malshri is a perfect ode to Kanauj and its Attar makers. Attar speaks to the soul. All the fire and smoke in a small space can seem apocalyptic, but it's also authentic and beautiful, she says. You cannot recreate this in a lab in Europe. Rachna Sachchesin is a freelance writer and works with artisan weavers in Laos. She is based in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and Luang Prabang, Laos. Follow her on Instagram. Okay. So, yeah. So that's it. The reason why I looked up Kanauj is because I had a perfume manufacturer, and it turns out this guy is like there. He's like in that city, like in that area. But let me know what you all thought. If you like this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share, and click the bell for notifications, everybody. Take care and have a great day.